ongoing, things that we're gonna move forward with right now. You did that, but these are the bills that we owe now. Okay, so you said Robinson Engineering, but I'm still looking at a large discrepancy of where is that money gonna come from? You can't say grant money for that, because grant money is grant money.
But you remember, we're already, what, 2 months into this budget? So
Okay,
you're looking at money that's already been, part of this budget that's been budgeted. So when you say Robinson Engineering loan 20,000, we're already 2 months into this budget. So you figure out to find out, the information you're missing, you have to find out how much is due during these first 2 months of this budget, which haven't passed yet, to pay them. Again, you've got a lot of numbers, and of course, the board,
I got things that I come up with.
the board doesn't have what you're quoting on. Right.
We got these numbers. This is the aging report here, the bill is 85. On the aging report by itself, just the age what we owe right now. And this, you said it's the bill with everybody. What we owe right now is $455,000. That's just for bills that we owe all the way back from 2013, a couple of 2012.
And how many of those are attorney fees that are on litigation?
No, very, very, very few, Mayor. As a matter of fact, you got Brickman, you have Comcast Cable, we have, these are the larger ones. I don't know who Alvin Mack and Sons are. We owe them a lot of money.
Hang on. Alvin Mack and Sons is the contractor who's doing the IEPA fixes to, that's part of the IEPA loan. And let's talk about that. That one. No. That is work that they will get paid when it's completed.
Okay, we have Heritage, 12,000. We have, there's a lot of things on here, that we have. Minor Electric. I'm just looking at the big ones. Robin and Schwartz. Attorneys. Rowan.
In fact, attorneys.
Rowan, I think that's the.
It's the lobbyists.
Lobbyists, that's 9,000. There's a lot of things here that we never addressed. This is what I'm saying. We still owe $455,000. And there's nothing in this budget that addresses how we're going to pay that. That's all. That was my question. But
out of those, I guess my concern is that two things. Number one, if you're saying that we owe $450,000, I guess my question would then be, how much of that is stuff that's not going to come out of the general fund?
Correct.
Because of the lawsuits, because of IEPA stuff, blah, blah, blah. So that would be an interesting contrast to see what the actual finite number is. I guess my next follow-up question would be, whatever that resulting number is, what, Trustee Burgess, what are we accomplishing by bringing this up, I guess? Like, are we planning on adjusting the budget? Do you want to review the budget again? Because I'm going to throw a number out, minus all those different things. If the finite number is $200,000, then are you suggesting that we re-look at the budget and slash $200,000?
I'm suggesting that we have to do something to pay that $200,000 number the arbitrary number that you said. I'm suggesting that there should be something in this budget stating that we're going to pay so much on the aging report. This is the aging report. That we're going to pay so much because we're going to get new bills started like 2 months ago, as the mayor just stated. But these still need to be paid. These are bills that we have day to day. Yes, some of this is lawyer fees. Yes, it is. But still, even if it is lawyer fees, we still have to pay the lawyer fees. I'm not talking about litigation. I'm talking about lawyer fees. Now, no, I didn't get the complete breakdown how much of those lawyer fees are adjudication and litigation and things like that. No, I'm just looking at how much we owe an entity. Where in the budget does it say that we're going to pay? The budget states that we're going to pay the bills that are going to come to us for this fiscal year.
Okay, hang on. Mohan, explain.
The outstanding accounts payable is based upon the last fiscal year. Last fiscal year, we budgeted for the balance budget, but unfortunately, because of the unpaid balances that have been carried over from year to year to year, that have been accumulated. Therefore, most of the expenditures have been already accounted for. Yeah, the money that needs to be paid out for those accounts payable either has to come from other sources of income. Most of the legal fees that is covered by the insurance, even the insurance will reimburse us for 50,000, leaving 50,000 and above. We will get all the reimbursement from the insurance companies. The remainder of the balance is the responsibility of the village, and the village has to pay. There is no choice.
Right. But you just stated that the money that this is what I'm talking about, is already in the budget. That's what you just said. I didn't see that. I don't see anywhere in the budget that we're gonna pay brickmen, we're gonna pay other vendors that we owe. There's nothing in there. Each and every department has their budget. They have their money for vehicle repairs and things like that. That's for this. I'm looking at what we owe. We went through this before. I've done this before. The mayor has done this. Rosie has done this. There's no projection in there for this money that's owed. There's money there, yes, ongoing. That we're going to get this. We're going to pay this. We're going to pay for that. We have to have supplies. We have to have vehicle expense. We have to have payroll. Yes, there is. There's money in there. There's money was budgeted. But there's nothing stating that we're going to pay so much for a back bill for the police department money. There's nothing in there that says we're going to pay the back bills for public works or for the fire department. That has to be paid. They're going to go to those vendors. They have to have something. And if we take away from their budget now, from the budget that we just did, then guess what? They're going to be short. And when they're short, then what they're going to do? You know, that's just my first question. And I have a few more, but if we're going to start off being short, then we're going to be short, period.
Well, I guess my question is you say that we've all done this before, the three of us have done this before. I don't ever remember a line item under the police department for past budgets. So what have we done before? We've reviewed the budget, we've talked about, I'll give you an example, ESHA, 2 years ago, sitting at this very table, we talked about how what we thought ESHA was going to be, and ESHA was so far beyond what we budgeted, so as a group, we decided to increase their budget, because that didn't make sense. Why would we severely under budget them? So yeah, we looked at numbers, and we've talked, but to my knowledge, in the 9 years of budgets I've been sitting there, I don't ever remember there being a line item in general, or for a specific department that addresses past due balances. So is that what you're talking about? I'm trying to figure out what you would like to accomplish by this. Not just bring it to the attention, because that's fine.
I'm not trying to accomplish. It's not a matter of me accomplishing. It's a matter of me doing what we're supposed to do. I have a budget in my desk in 2008 and 2009. It shows each and everything that has to be. It does an explanation. There's pie charts and everything showing what we're going to do. So much for debt service and so much for the agent. You know, there's so much that we do budget. There's something in there that states that we have. There's nothing in this budget to say that we're going to pay bills that we owe. Yes, we're going to pay bills that are going to come in, and we're looking at how much bills that are going to come in. Absolutely, that's in here. That money's in there. That we're going to budget X amount of money for X, Y, and Z. Yes, it is. There's nothing in there that states that we're going to pay. This is just the first thing that we're going to pay the money that we owe these vendors for these different departments that we use.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
But that being said, bringing that up is one thing. Okay, to point something out, great, perfect, wonderful. What would you like? What are you suggesting?
Okay. The reason I'm bringing it up is when I got the budget, as everybody else, I don't know, I got the budget the day of, that morning of the budget hearing is when I finally got the budget. No, I didn't have a chance to go through that. I didn't have a chance to look at it. All I did was look at numbers and try to make sure that A equal B, and that was all I was trying to look at, to make sure that everything. But then when I had a chance to go over and look at it and look at what we owe, and then I asked the question last week about who we owe, and then I was told, well, you should know. So now that I did do some more research to find out what we owe and who we owe, now I'm going back to the budget, looking at how we're going to pay it. How can we move forward paying or start a new budget and we still owe money, at least we can say we're going to dedicate X amount of money to pay the agent report. If the agent report is going to be so much, then we should dedicate so much because you're going to pay it. We're going to pay it sooner or later, but there should be something in there that for that reason. And that's what I'm saying. That there should be. We should.
Bringing it up isn't going to be that's not conducive to.
I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up, trustee, because when else can I bring it up? I mean, this is what I mean.
I'm just trying to figure out what's the end here.
The end is we need to budget. Like I stated before, we need to find a way to at least take a chunk out of this. And this is just this part. This is just part one of the things that I looked at. That was just one of the things. You know, I like I said, I had a chance to go through a whole lot, and that's just part one. Is that amount? The next thing I was looking at is, you know, anticipated cost. I mean, some of these things that we have in there, yes, it is anticipated, and the mayor put down a few other things, but we have to be realistic with some of these things that we did. I mean, realistically, we can't cut a department in half and expect that to happen. We cut $100,000 off overtime for the police department, and we all know that that's not going to work because they are down police officers. So therefore, when you're down police officers, it creates overtime. But to go in knowing that that's not going to happen, that they have to work within that budget, okay, fine. By December, they're going to be back here, or somebody's going to be back here stating, no, the budget is going to be exceeded. They're going to exceed their budget because you cut them almost half. Their overtime was $270 last year. Now it's budgeted for $160.
You know, you bring up a good point about the police department because, yes, they're lower than what they were last year, but we brought on 7 new police officers, was it the end of last year, or the previous year. Since then, we've lost three police officers. That means we are still up 4 in one. Number 2, we know that we had hail that overtime because of officers being on probation for 6 months. So that means those officers had to not only us pay for them to go to training, which they got paid for that, to and from. We also had to pay to keep officers riding along and the overtime for the training of those officers. And we also know that we had to reduce our hours on our liquor licenses. So, which meant that when we had a 4 o'clock liquor license, that we had to have our second shift officers, which ended at 11 o'clock, work over on the weekends, not just at 4 o'clock, but sometimes till 6, 7 o'clock, with all overtime to be able to cover those things like that. So, you know, there was a lot of things last year when it came to overtime in the police department. We put on additional officers on the streets and stuff during the winter months. I mean, there was a lot of other things that the chief brought up that's been done during the reason it was so high last year. Again, all the departments are being challenged to reduce their overtime. We talked to Mohan and the department heads. Mohan's going to make sure we run a monthly report for our department heads. We're going to be having meetings to keep track of where we're at with the budget and what they need, what areas they need to keep an eye on. Again, a lot of things we're putting in place so that it's not just 6 months down the road or 8 months down the road, I'm over budget. This is something that we're doing constantly. And, you know, this is no different than the corporate world. You know, a municipality isn't. You have to reduce your overtime. There's costs you have to reduce. And you have a budget. So the department heads are being challenged again this year. They're one to stay within their budget to reduce overtime and to live within our means.
Yes, Mayor, but that all sounds great, but I'm looking at $100,000. We're going to save $100,000 in overtime versus what we paid last year with less people. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing, and this is something I did ask at the meeting and no one was able to tell me, why are we transferring $300,000 out of the water fund into the general fund? For what reason are we doing that? I never found out.
But the reason is we need to cover general fund expenses. The general fund is not like a flood fund. So we need to cover some portion of water sewer fund expenditure incurred on behalf of water sewer fund expenditure that was incurred in general fund that we have to get reimbursed. For example, legal fees incurred by the administration department needs to be shared by water sewer fund.
Are you anticipating legal fees this year?
You know, in general, there's a cost sharing. We have to share the cost because it is for the benefit of the village we are incurring in general fund, whatever the legal fees is. So therefore, as an enterprise fund, they are supposed to contribute to the general fund. It's a normal pattern in almost all the villages in the state of Illinois to charge a nominal fee to the water sewer fund. You will. It is called enterprise fund to share the cost of the general government. Therefore, we can charge some portion of the expenditure into the water fund and sewer fund and get reimbursed the cost of whatever we incur in general fund.
Okay, Mohan, that sounded real good. I didn't understand it, but my question is this. $300,000 coming from the water fund. Water fund is there to pay the water and sewer expenses and to pay public works salaries. And anything to do with that. I understand that part. We used to have to borrow so much from the water fund to pay. So therefore, my question is this what we're doing now, taking it out of here instead of having to borrow it every 3 or 4 months? Because, you know, $300,000, we can take that and do some infrastructure repair or something like that. But just to put it, we all know what happens when it goes to general fund, it gets distributed throughout the other departments. That's what general fund does. I just wanted to know why do we hit that fund, even though we have an increase. We increased the water, we increased the water for a specific purpose.
Right.
But to also now that we have a surplus or whatever, that we can draw X amount of money out of it, then it should be earmarked for a definite, instead of this general fund.
Because unfortunately, general fund is not self-sustainable.
Absolutely, so therefore we need to look at that. That's
Therefore, we can charge water fund, sewer fund, on a reasonable basis. We can charge them and get it transferred over to the general fund to cover the cost. There is nothing absolutely principally wrong in transferring.
No, I didn't say it was wrong.
Water, sewer
I'm not
fund.
saying that was wrong. You can transfer money from department to department, but you cannot transfer. You can't transfer.
We don't have money
you
in
can't
general
transfer.
fund. We wish. We don't have money.
We're not supposed to be able to transfer money out of the water fund into general, because in the general fund we pay wages. You can't use the water fund for wages. We are.
Not for wages.
But in general fund, we don't. There's nothing. Once it hits that general fund, it can be used for wages because it's part of general fund.
Definitely, because it belongs to general fund when you transfer from water sewer fund.
Okay. Well, I'm just. Those. I'm like, I have 13 pages here. I'm not going to go through all this, but I will sit down and talk.
Yeah, if you
Hopefully between now and time.
if you
But
go
it's just-
through,
But it's just, there's a lot of things here, Mohan, that there's no money for. That we haven't paid. I mean, there's no money allocated for. I'll put it that way.
I guess I have a question, Trustee.
Yes.
You're bringing up all this stuff that you weren't part of the budget preparing, you didn't want to.
No, don't say that, Mayor. I didn't say, how can you tell me? Mayor, please, do not say I do not want to be part of that. Don't say that.
Did you ask me about it?
Did you ask anybody?
I didn't ask.
No, you did not, Mayor. No, you did not. You said that you were sitting down with the department heads and going through the budget. You did not say, would anybody like to join me? No, you didn't. No, you didn't. I didn't hear that.
Tell me you're done.
Okay, I'm done.
What I'm saying is, you come in 13 pages, and I don't see any solutions, and you haven't brought up any solutions. You brought up questions that probably should have been answered, especially since you're a liaison from the finance department to the board.
Been dealing with Mohan each and every week. Every week I go to him.
I guess I was expecting more from the liaison to come before the board with a solution, rather than 13 pages of.
Mayor, I cannot go on the budget until you complete what you're doing. I cannot go line item by line item on anything until you complete what you're doing. You said you meeting with the department head. When you get through meeting with the department heads and you discuss with them how much money they're gonna have, and this is what they have to live with, after that happened is when I got the budget.
So June 30th.
That's when I got the budget. I got the budget at the same time everyone else got it, I presume, on that Monday morning when the clerk put it out there for everybody. And it took me that long to go over, yes. We didn't do it last week. This took time. It's not something I just did right away. You've been working on the budget since May. You're going to tell me in 15 days I should have been done? You've been working on this since May because we've been asking about you. So you're still working on it since May. I get 15 days and you're telling me that I come up with this all of a sudden. No, that's not all of a sudden. This is careful thought. I thought this out of different things. Yes, I'm bringing it up now. I didn't have a chance to bring it up before. I was never asked to be part of it. I've talked to Mohan about several things, about payments, about money going out. Do we have enough money? All these things I talk to him each and every week. I go and talk to him about it. You see me here. Don't say that I just now all of a sudden I did this.
What is your solution here?
It's like, it's going to take you too long for me to sit here. I'll talk to Mohan. If you want, we can make an appointment to talk together.
You've got 13 pages, so you should have an issue and what your solution is underneath these.
Okay, I can go over each and every one.
So what's your solution?
Okay.
Just go with solution. That's what we're interested in.
While you're looking for those solutions, I just want to make.
Looking, I just got it right. Go ahead.
While you're flipping, 2 points. In 2009, when Lewis Towers was elected, it was presented to us, there was $500,000 unpaid bills, okay? And yeah, we all heard that and we did, yes, and we've been trying to make up for that ever since. So if you think about the 5 years that we've been trying to pay off that $500,000 that was budgeted for impact fees that we never got, and all the bills we've gotten since then, we've been playing catch up for 5 years. So one would think that unless we have a huge windfall of money, catch up is something we're going to be doing. That's number one. You bring up overtime in the police department. 2 years ago, the overtime reached over $300,000. And when we realized that, we flipped. Something had to be done. We went to all the departments. You have to cut your overtime. The police department, you have to cut your overtime. They did. We had to tell them, you have to cut your operating budget, you have to cut your supply budget, you have to do these things. This is something that's happening all over. You can't expect the police department or the public works department or any other department to willy-nilly cut their budget. Nobody wants to cut their budget. You have to put these guidelines in place. Do we always reach these goals? No, we don't. But that's our goal. We've talked about the fact that the budget is paper. It's fluid. It's elastic. You're going to have to amend it. You might have to change it. These are things that are happening. But we just need to be cognizant because while this was the quickest budget meeting I've ever been a part of, I'll say that, there wasn't too much conversation back and forth. There hasn't been any information until now. I can understand that it took you, 14, 15 days or whatever to do the budget. That's fine. It's never, I guess I'm just confused because we've never gone into this much depth before. Maybe that says something about the board as a whole, but if you can go 13 pages of this budget, I would hope that at least 3 of those pages talks about the other 10 that says this is what I'm going to suggest. Because if you want to put $100,000 back in the police department, where are we going to get it from? Are we not going to buy paper? Are we going to cut more public works department? Because the last time we did that, which I believe I was the only trustee that voted
interesting the police department was brought up tonight because the police department was brought up on June 30th. And watching the video, I remember you were questioning the chief about this $100,000. And the chief said it's challenging, but he thinks he can handle it. And then your last statement was, I guess you're okay with it. And then you moved on to the next subject. So this is something we've already discussed on June 30th, and you already questioned the department head if he was going to be able to achieve this. But now the department is not here, but you want to add it back into your budgets. I'm curious.
I'll try to explain this very slowly. First of all, you're talking about catch-up. Just because we did something X amount of time ago doesn't mean we continue to keep doing the same thing now. That's why we're in the position. I would hope that we at some point in time put our foot down and say, okay, let's pay before we go forward. If we have to do whatever we have to do to make it happen, okay. But to budget money that we don't even have or that we know is not going to last 8 months, that doesn't make sense. Now to sit here and say that I didn't want to be, or I wasn't part, or I don't have a solution, or it took me 14 days, I still remind you. Yes, it took me 14 days to do this, but I didn't have the numbers until that particular time. You knew what you were going to do, Mayor, back in May. I cannot go to the department heads. I will not go to the department heads and ask them what they can and cannot live with. That's not my job. My job is to, when I get the numbers before me, is to make sure that we can make this happen. Right now, I don't see us making this happen for a full fiscal year for the money that we're that's coming in. Yes, you cut $100,000, and he said he was okay with that. But then, come January or December, when we come up and then we find out that we'll be over budget, what are we going to do then?
What did we do last year?
We started borrowing money. That's what we had to do. There's no way. I didn't put any money in the budget. You didn't put any money in the budget. We didn't borrow any money last year. We didn't borrow any money last year. No, wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Back up. You said we didn't borrow any money last year. Now you said we paid it back. We paid what back? If we didn't borrow any money last year, then therefore we didn't have to pay anything back. We borrowed money last year from other funds. Yes, we did pay it back, but we borrowed money. If we didn't pay it back, then we didn't borrow it. If you don't borrow something, you have to pay it back. So yes, we did borrow money last year. Yes, we did pay it back with tax money. Yes, we did. Which is something that you know, Mayor, Rosie knows, and the other trustees know that every year we have to go through this because we get our money late. We know that already. So don't say we didn't have to pay it back. We didn't borrow money. Yes, we did borrow money. But we paid it back. Only thing.
What's the solution?
The solution? Then like I said, I need to sit down and talk to Mohammed and yourself, and we can go over this again and look at it. I can show you this, but right now, subject everybody to this is going to take a while. But each and everything that I talked about or that I have in there is here. I don't have all the solutions. If I did have all the solutions, believe me, things would be a lot different than what they are right now. But I don't have the solution. I'm just asking that we at least come close, not just a balanced budget, but a realistic budget. That we come close to having a realistic budget. That we don't have to go out there and take money from the cell tower, take money from whoever we take it from, and then pay it back later. We've always had to do this because of taxes. Now we're doing it because of whatever. We had to levy money to the taxpayers this year. They had to pay an increase because we had to pay our bonds. Not saying that we won't have to do it again, but I'm looking at these numbers that we have, how much money that we owe in certain things. They're coming due, Mayor. They're coming due. Where's that money going? I don't know. Unless somebody sitting out there wants to write a check. But I don't see where the money's going to come. But don't start off knowing, push it to the side, so we'll deal with that in December, we'll deal with that in November, we'll deal with that later. That's not how, at least we can come close and say, okay, we know every year we have a drop between April and September because of the taxes. We know that. But right now, we're gonna drop before it even gets to that part, because guess what? We get no more tax money after next month. After August, we get no more until next year, February, whatever. We have to do what we have for right now. That's right now. We get no more, because you got your 2 tax payments already. So after September, that's it. So we have to deal with that. All I'm saying is we have to come up with something that's more tangible than what we have. And you're right, I didn't get a chance to go to it, but I did have a chance to do it now.
I think one thing you have to remember too, though, and you've been on this board for a long time, that Sauk Village has always had to borrow money. Going back,
Yes, we did.
we've always,
Yes,
Sauk
we did.
Village has always, going back to before the previous administration, because they stopped it.
But you said we didn't borrow money last
But-
year. Yes, we did. Yes,
Sauk
we did.
Village, it was a norm for Sauk Village, especially in the drought times, to have a
Yes.
loan
Yes, it is.
for $500,000.
Yes, it did, every year.
Every year, so the village should continue making payroll and doing what they needed to do.
Yes, we did.
During the-
Yes, we did. And
South
that's,
Village has never had a fund that we could grow or we had money in there for a rainy day.
there's no projection, man. There's nothing in writing stating that we're going to set aside X amount to do whatever. There's no projections in
South
there.
Village has always tried to say, we're going to set a certain amount aside,
Where-
and never had the money.
But where is it at, man? I mean, even if there's at least a guideline or
I
something.
remember when Bev was our finance director, one year we said, we're gonna put $25,000 to the side. But you know what, the $25,000 never got put to the side because we had to make sure we could continue paying bills. So you talk about being realistically, hey, you know what, I could say, we're gonna put $100,000 to the side. But realistically, it's not gonna happen. We're taking the money that's coming in and we're paying the bills. We know that we've got other bills that are sitting after you talk about your aging report that will be resolved once lawsuits are settled. We know that there's other bills on there that are already projected that will be paid when the work is completed on the wells. So you talk about this large amount of money, that a lot of that money is getting paid as litigation ends, as the work on the wells get finished, because those funds will be paid through the IEPA. So, again, there's a lot of things that are included in there, so we don't lose sight of it. But we know that it's going to have to be paid throughout this next year. Trustee?
So, question. We talked on 30th, we had a remember. This budget is already started. Obviously, we want to get this budget passed as soon as possible. What's the deadline?
It has to be passed before the month of,
For the month of July.
31st.
Awesome, okay.
Or else
It's
it
the
will be
15th.
violated in July.
Okay, that gives us 16 days. Here's my question.
There's other things that happen too. I mean, again, what you have before you is a proposed budget. I mean, as long as somebody's passed by then, once we're okay, the board can go off and start looking at stuff, and we can always come back and make an amendment. There's amendments that can be made after it's passed. And again, I've been asking this board for how many months? Twice a month, on the first Tuesday and on the third Tuesday, to come up with cost-saving initiatives, to come up with ways that we can either bring revenue into the budget or cut money going out of this budget. I've been asking this board for months. I've only had a couple trustees that have come up and started working on projects. But again, and like I told the board, what we did with the department heads was give us your budget, what you need for this next year, what you want. I call it their wish list. Mohan put all the numbers together in a budget form. It was $5 million over what we project we're going to receive this next year. $5 million has already been cut from this budget before you even saw it.
So
That's
why I said I didn't have a number.
No, and I'm telling you, and I've been telling the board how many times during the meetings that I'm working on this, there's a $5 million shortfall that we're working on. So what ended up happening was the department heads put everything together. It came to me. I started looking at, and we had to start making major cuts. Okay, $5 million has been cut off this so we can present the board with a balanced budget. Before I presented to the board, I went back to the department heads and said, get back with me if there's anything that I cut that you need, or if you want to change anything. I had two department heads came back to me, and that was the police department and public works. And we made some additional changes before I presented it to you. Okay? What you saw was a balanced budget that when I first received it was $5 million higher than what we projected coming in. Now, I've got no problem going back into many budgets. I'm wide open. In fact, I've made this very clear that if any trustees have something that you want to present to this board, I will open up the floor. You can take full credit, and you can go on and you can tell the residents what you've done for this community. Nothing has to come through the mayor's office. I don't have to say the mayor did this or anything. I'm looking to the trustees to step up to the plate. And again, you may have 13 pages worth of stuff where you went through and you picked every single page or a 27-page budget. Okay, so on a 27-page budget, you come up with 13 pages worth of issues that you don't I don't know, approve of or like or something. But I'm just asking that we come back with a solution.
Okay.
And so if you have item number one, you say professional services are $800,000, what is the solution to reduce that or to make a cut somewhere for the $800,000? You talk about $100,000 for police department. Okay, what's your solution to put another $100,000 back in the police department if you think we're going to if we're going to need it for overtime? And what are you putting in place as part of that solution to make sure that overtime is cut? Again, you talk about $300,000 for transfers. Okay, if you don't want to transfer $300,000, where's the $300,000 going to come from? And again, he's already explained to you how that works. It's expenses the general fund has to pay for on behalf of your water, sewer, and streets. So what it is you want to call it a transfer, it is being transferred from those accounts, but it's more or less reimbursing the general fund for stuff that we're doing or we're paying for out of the general fund. So, again, I'm just looking for a solution. I've said over this thing, and I've said with the department heads, and again, I said off the bat, the budget is probably not, and I probably can honestly say it's not everything they want, right? I'm looking at one of them right now. They want a lot more. And sitting in this position, if I could give them everything they want, I would have. But the fact is, and the reality is, we only project a certain amount of money coming into this community. So what we're looking at is making sure our department heads have what they need and trying to make sure we provide them with what they need and continue to run this village. You talk about having an aging report. Sauk Village has always had an aging report. It's nothing new. You talk like it's new. Sauk Village has always had an aging report. And we continue to try to pay it down. You say we're at $400,000 over. Oh, what was it, 2009? We knew we were over $500,000. So I think the aging report's probably coming down. Again, it's not coming down as fast as we want it to, but it is coming down. And the goal will be continued to bring it down. So, it's tough. This budget is tough. And I'm not going to lie to you. There was things that you talk about. We know crime is a major issue in our community. But you know what? Inside this budget is funds available for police and fire pension board, or police and fire commission, to go out and start another list for police officers. Now, we know that's going to take time. But we're going to spend money to go have a list made where people can come in and apply for the job, they can do their testing, they can go have their polygraphs, they can have their physicals, the village should be paying for all this, so that we can look for put additional police officers on the street. So, again, there's a lot here. But again, when we look at this budget, there's a lot of things we looked at creatively. Again, cutting expense for fixing an aging fleet and putting new squads on the street for a lower amount for a lease. Same thing with the Public Works Department. Instead of putting additional money into our aging fleet in the Public Works Department, we put $25,000 for them to go negotiate to get additional trucks with the same type of lease program that we have for our police department. So it's a challenge. I'm not doubting, what's the word I'm looking for? You're right, trustee. This is a challenging budget when it comes to reducing overtime. When it comes to making sure we live within our means. When it comes to, again, not getting everything that as a department head, they and we may want.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sitting here, and I'm not gonna do this, go back and forth. First of all, as I stated before, I wasn't part of that. You said I was asked to be part of. I'm sorry, I didn't get that memo. That's the first thing. As far as me, and you stated yourself that you didn't even know what it was gonna look like until after you talked to the department head. So how can I even think about trying to do anything with this budget until I get the budget in front of me? I can't speculate. I can't. If I did that, then the first thing I would be accused of jumping the gun because I don't even know what you're doing with it and what you have. So that's the only reason why I had to take that time. As far as the deadline is concerned, we knew the deadline back in January.
That's right.
We knew exactly when the deadline was in January. This is July, so don't tell me that, well, we got a deadline. We've had a deadline. But don't make it like we have to hurry up now. But I'm sorry.
I wasn't able to finish, so that's not why I asked that. What I was gonna say, while you're bringing up the deadline, because I brought that up, what I was gonna say is that this going back and forth is not doing anything. It's not conducive of producing a result. So if you have 13 pages, and the mayor's willing to sit down with you, and Mohan is willing to sit down with you, then why, I'm sorry, then why are we having this conversation now?
I asked that question.
What I'm saying is that if we have a budget and it has to be passed by the 13th, or by the 31st, and the mayor is saying that we can come back and amend it, great. We either pass this and amend later, set a date to rehab another budget meeting, because clearly that's what we need, or we don't pass this, and the three of you sit down and look at your numbers, and then the board is presented with a new budget, which then we would have another budget meeting, which again, clearly is what we need. Or we just say, forget it to the deadline, and whatever happens, happens. But there's no point in presenting this to the audience, because clearly there's a problem with the budget. The entire board's not okay with it. Okay, then let's revisit it. But going back and forth about what I know, what you know, what happened, fine. You've got documentation, provide it to the board, or provide it to the mayor and finance director. You pre-review it, bring it back to us, and let us review it. Because the last time we looked at this budget on the 30th, we all looked at it, we all talked to the department heads, we all said, okay, let's present this to the audience. Let's present this. We'll come back, we'll have a budget hearing, it was posted in the paper, we did all these things because we had the plans to pass this. That's what we did. We looked at it and said it was okay. If it's not okay, then there's no point that for 50 minutes we've been going back and forth.
Well, there is a point, trustee. So number one, this has been out there for public review. So this was the budget hearing about. This is something that's already been proposed, this board has already discussed it. This is something that, again, has to be passed before the end of the month. But then again, it's a living document that can go back and we can make changes, we can amend it. So to try to hold something up, just to make us in violation of not doing what
Mayor, please don't say that. Please don't say that. That's now you please don't even put that on record. I never said hold anything up. I never said do not
Did
pass.
I mention your name?
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You said just by us holding this up. I didn't say nothing about holding anything up. I didn't even say anything about not voting on it. So don't say that. Don't say that that instead of holding this up. No, I'm one trustee. You have 6 trustees on this board. If the 5 trustees or 4 say pass this budget, guess what? It's passed. It doesn't make a difference about what I say or what I do. If the 5 trustees, 1 or 4 trustees, if the majority of the trustees want to pass this budget, fine. That's what they do. Only thing I'm bringing up is that I asked a question. I'm not trying to start or stop anything. I'm saying I had a chance to look over this. Please be clear. I had a chance to look over this. This is what I came up with. It has nothing to do with trying to stop this budget. It has anything to do with trying to hold anything up for a deadline or whatever. These are some of the questions that I was able to ask, and I said before, I would be willing to sit down from Thursday till next week, any day you want to, with you and Mohan, and go over this. But as far as trying to hold it up or whatever, no. The people came out here tonight, they have questions. They may want to ask. These are just my questions. I'm the person that brought this particular thing up. Nobody else did. This is something I brought up. This is the only thing I'm asking. You asked the question when you went around and when you started the meeting, does anyone have any questions? Anything pertaining to this? That's all I did. Like you said, we've been on this for 55 minutes. We do not have to go and amend anything. If this is okay, yes, we said, like I said before, I said okay because the numbers were right. I didn't have a chance to look at it in the 2 hours that I actually had a chance to look at it when I got it that Monday. So we can move on. These are some of the things that I have questions about. I'm available whatever time you guys want, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of this week, and then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, anytime after 3 o'clock. I'm available. If that's what you want to do. If not, then I have no problem with that. But don't say that it will be this or it will be that. No, sir.
Okay, Trustee, first of all, I just wish that the trustees had your notes in front of them. I wish, number one, number two, that you would have provided this earlier, because some of this stuff we could have been able to answer.
I just finished it.
And have additional information.
I just finished it. So, I mean, but this is not the Bible. It says on here, budget analysis prepared by Derek Burgess. This is nothing to do with, I'm trying to augment your budget. Your budget is the way it is. These are just some of the questions that I asked these at the budget hearing. I asked about them. So, we can move on and please, meet after 7 o'clock, please, let's move on.
Trustee. Next, I would like to finish by saying I would love to sit down with you and go over these. I would just ask that you please send it to Mohan and myself. You can either send it to us electronically, you can give us a hard copy.
I'll make copies tonight.
I don't care how you do it, so that we can start to review. But it is important that a budget pass before the end of the month. Again, it's something that I am open to. I'm very open to. And we can go through some of this stuff, and again, I think it's something that as we go through, we can even make sure it's available, or make it available to the trustees. You can review it. But again, it's important that a budget gets passed. But it's also important to realize that we can go back and we can amend this budget. If there's solutions to and I say solutions to paying, like your agent reports and things like that. Again, I'm all in favor of getting that involved in there. But it's important also that we keep our current personnel levels where we're at. It's also important that we bring additional police officers on our streets. So there's certain things that we're looking at that is important when it comes, especially to the safety and well-being of the residents of Sauk Village. So, anyone else? Trustee.
Trustee, let me you said you had at least 13 pages of stuff that you found, have concern.
Yes.
All right, you got 13 pages. All right. And you just told the mayor you're willing to sit with the finance director and go over those 13 pages of concern. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we still have a couple days left. Is there any way possible you get with Mohan in the next couple days?
Yes.
And you feel like Trustee Williams stated, if it has a major effect on this present budget we're looking at, then I think we should take to take a look at those 13 items, as the trustee pointed out. If you're willing to do it, Mohan is here. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. let's take a couple of days to look at it and do it. Is that possible, Mayor?
Definitely.
All right, agree. Are we in agreement to that, sir?
Tomorrow's gonna be another question, because you've got stuff to look at tomorrow, right?
I said Thursday.
Okay, move on.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
But Mayor and the board, my request is to have this budget passed as it is without any changes.
Correct.
Going forward, maybe after the month, after the budget is passed, next month we can make a supplemental budget and get it over with.
Correct.
So that we will not be in violation of state law as well as the county and
If you two gentlemen get it passed down, get it all set and everything, why can't it be in our October weekend, take a look at it and
Because
Go.
what you have is you have a budget that has already been presented to the public.
public?
It has already been out
They-
for public view.
And,
We're here to review that budget, that the village board has already, said that this is what we're going to be presenting to the public, this is what we're
Yeah.
looking at passing. So, again, it's important that, we take notes, we're gonna listen to the public, we're gonna end up recessing, because we're gonna go into our 7 o'clock meeting. But it's going to be important that, when the public comes up and finally gives their comments, we take these notes, we look into, some of the stuff, so that when we look into this, after we get this passed, when we go back into this next month and start looking at, see what amendments we want to make, we have all that information together.
I have, I don't know. You're saying that we're going to still move forward with the budget that we have in hand, and then after that, we're going to amend whatever needs to be amended. Then why am I having this meeting? Why are we doing
Because this is for the public.
it? I mean, no, I'm not talking about, this meeting, yes, for the public. I'm not talking about that meeting. I'm not talking about, yes, I want the public, yes, that's what they came out for, so they can talk about the budget. I'm talking about why we, yourself, me, and you having this meeting, that we're going to go ahead and pass this, what we have, and then later on, we're going to amend. So that means I'm going to go ahead and pass this. Then why am I going back?
No,
why am I going to have this meeting?
No,
We're already passed.
because otherwise, if we don't file the budget well before 30th, we are violating the state law.
Mayor,
Because
Mohan,
to
Mayor,
do what you want to do, trust me.
Mayor, just 1 second, please. We've had meetings for less than, that we have a call meeting for less than for this. If this is that important, we can vote on this on the 29th of July. If that's the case, if it's that important. I'm just saying, but so don't say we have to pass it next week. We've had meetings for less than to vote money out for other reasons. This is the budget. If we feel that it has to be looked over a little bit more, then what's wrong with that? I'm not in favor of passing it, knowing that there's discrepancies, and then come back after the fact, and we're going to amend.
Well, let's look at it this way. You want to stop the process, which we've already started, which on June 30th, the village board met and presented a proposed budget to the public. That had to be out there for a total of 10 days. 10 days, had to be posted in the newspaper. We are coming back here having a public hearing, so the public can give comment, which they haven't been able to for the last hour. And again, what ended up happening was that the budget would end up passing next week. What you're asking for is that the process be placed on hold, give time for you to meet with the mayor and the finance director to make changes. Then we have to come back and meet with the board, present those changes again. Then we have to give another 10 days for the public to review the new. And then we have to set up a public hearing, which puts us past the time that we need to do to have this passed. Now, why would you have a meeting with the mayor and
I don't need to have a meeting. I don't need to have, if you already made up your mind that you want to do it this way, why am I having a meeting with you guys? Why am I doing this? If you're going to go ahead and pass this and do this and then come back later on and maybe you amend it, maybe you won't, but guess what? You will still have this particular budget passed, and the only thing that can be said to me is, well, we passed, we can't do it, what you want to do. So I'm just saying, I'm one person. please, we can move on, you need questions for all this, I'm through with that, I'm through.
Well, I just have a question. Number one, what's the penalty if we're late?
The county can dock our tax levies.
Awesome, okay, great. Second thing, they can dock our tax levies if we're late. Sure, okay, so A, our option is to be late, that's an option, we'll throw that out there. B, you can't meet till Thursday, trustee Burgess?
You can't meet tomorrow.
Oh, okay, I'm just asking, I'm looking at the calendar, because it needs to be put in the paper, okay? 10 days, and I'm just checking the village clerk, it's calendar days, not business days. So it has to be in the paper by the 20th, which would be Sunday. I mean, Sunday's paper probably be a little bit more expensive, but hey, let's work on that. So today's the 15th, and you can't meet till the 17th. Then the board would have to meet the 18th or 19th. I'm not available on the 19th, I'm just throwing it out there. But the board would have to meet on the 18th to review the changes that you guys have come up with in the 24 hours that you had it. And then it has to be posted by the 20th, so that if we have our full day, so we have another meeting on the 31st, so then we could actually have a budget meeting, so the audience can come in and look at your changes. All of which I'm okay with. Sure, let's do that. But we all have to understand that it has to be in by 10 days. It's not about what the mayor has decided he wants to do. It's what we can do, because you very diligently went through and took the time to look at the budget. However, you did it 16 days after we got the budget. And I'm not saying the 16 days because I'm talking about it took you so long. What I'm saying is, now we're at an even bigger time crunch. So this is what we're going to do. All these pull out our calendars and realize this week Friday, we have another budget meeting, and then on the 31st, we have this exact same meeting to allow the audience to talk. Which, again, I'm completely okay with. But if that's not realistic, then our only other options are to pass this budget and then meet on the 4th or the 6th, not the 5th, because that's not out. So we could meet on August 4th or 5th to have another meeting, or 4th or 6th to have another meeting, or we can just do this whenever and suffer the penalties to the county. Those are our only 3 options. What's it going to be? Penalties? Meeting in August after we pass this budget, or do everything we can do to make the changes, pass the corrected budget before the 31st, which means Friday, we'll see all of our smiling faces again. What's our plan?
And I've been very clear, it's important that we get a budget passed. And I've got no problem sitting on the trustee and the finance director, looking at these and coming back for the village board, again, next month, and looking at if there's any amendments that need to be made, and it's called a supplemental or something, budget. But, again, I don't think the timing is realistic, because if anything happens, if someone can't make it to a board, we don't have a quorum, the timing is just too tight, so.
That's my question, because that's what we have to do. So I understand the trustee, I understand your frustration, we took the time to do this. If we pass the budget, you don't feel that we're gonna come back. So, let's set a date. What works better, Monday or Wednesday? We'll pass the budget on the last board meeting. We have to pass by the 31st. I think that you made these, you'd like to present these changes. I would like to see these changes. You've got these papers in front of you, I don't. I'd like to see your changes. Let's set a date so that the trustee can feel validated in his changes.
Again, it's too early to set a date, because what has to happen is the trustee needs to sit down, provide the information. There's information that he's missing that has to be provided, so they can take a look at the whole entire fact. So that's why, again, we set it up at a committee meeting in August to go over the changes, review. Again, once he has all the information, there may be some other changes that need to be made. So again, this is not something that is cut and dry. This is something that needs to be set down and review. But with that said, I'm going to ask for a motion to recess, so we go into our 7 o'clock meeting. And I'm going to end up asking at the 7 o'clock meeting where we have a Springfield update. And when we get to the meeting, I'm just going to ask that we table item number 3 and table item number 4, so we can have a quick meeting tonight, committee meeting, and we'll go right back into our budget hearings. So, is there a motion to recess? Got a motion, is there a second? Got a motion, and a second. Clerk, Sharp, please call roll.
Burgess. Yes. Morgan. Myers.
Yes.
Thompson. Yes. Washington. Yes. Williams.
All right, meeting recess. Meeting recess, for paperwork. I'd ask for motion to reconvene the special meeting for the budget hearing. Is there a motion to reconvene?
Second.
Motion and a second. Clerk, Sharp.
Burgess.
Yes.
Morgan. Myers.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Washington. Yes. Williams.
All right, and I think we'll go ahead and move to item number 3, public participation. Clerk, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Francine Anderson, and I live at 1616 216th Street. There's a couple of things I would like to emphasize in the beginning of my discussion. Before I go through your budget page by page, because I have taken the time to do that. So, first of all, I would like to know, Mr. Mohan, you have from the right, I hope so. Okay. We have voted and we have been given a increase of $2 in the water rates. So we are now paying $7.50. It was supposed to be for fixing our infrastructure. But I hear today that and I looked through your budget and we have a lot of grant money. Matter of fact, $585,000 that's been proposed to spend for fixing infrastructure. So I'm quite perplexed on why in the world am I paying $2 a month per increase on rates, and then also have budgeted this $585,000. It's just $500,000. And I do math. I don't know about her, but I do. Also, sir, just before I go through, I also want to know, I've been through your budget, and I have found, it has to be wrong, but there's $4,739 in professional services and contracts. I would urge you not to pass this budget, till you go back and look at some numbers, because I know that what I'm adding and what I'm seeing is not good for me as a resident. I don't know about anybody else, but I know Francine Anderson can't afford to pay $4,700,000 on professional services to anyone. Those are some great concerns. Just to start off my discussion, we can go to page 2. And I generally add it up, but under page 2, near the bottom where it says general infrastructure from the state of Illinois, you have budget $175,000. I understand you mentioned that earlier. I want to know how are you adding these numbers? You got the Parks and Recs grant here, and we're not even sure that you have the money. So why is it in this budget? Why are we adding numbers of something that we're not sure of? Also on that same page, it says Cops for Hire grant. That grant is done. How are we maintaining those positions that we hired? The 2 officers that were paid for out of that grant. Page 3. Your total general fund budget was an increase of $1.5 million. And you tell me you saved $5 million. Something, sir, is just not adding up. Page 4. Again, I just want to highlight, unprofessional services, we expended last year $550,000, $500,000 on the finance and administration for professional services. And you budget that amount again. Under contractual services, you say we expended $134,000, and then you did make a budget cut up down to 50,000. Page 5. Under elected officials, where you have your committees. The Senior Citizen Committee expended $1,060 last year. And in this budget, you proposed 0. So how did they go from 1,000 to 0? I know that the Senior Committee had a lot of activities where they raised their own money. But I think if all the other committees have $150, $300, you could propose $1. Some for the Senior Committee. I'm on page 6 of your budget now. At the bottom, you have infra improvement, state again, $175,000. I think in your discussion earlier, you said we were getting $175,000. That's 2, and I'm just on page 6. On the public works and safety on page 7. You have, under your actual, you say you spent $84,500. You're proposing 94 for vehicles. If I remember correctly, you got 2 new vehicles within the last 2 years. So are you planning to purchase vehicles with this, or is this to maintain vehicles? I had no questions on page 3. I'm on page 9 of your 27 pages. And I would like to look under the professional development piece. And this is as you talked about the 25-cent raise that they got per call. The year before, you budgeted $2,500. They used $1,156. And now we're proposing $1,700. I want to know if, since there is such a big emphasis in the U.S., in Illinois, and everywhere, about being prepared and prepared readiness, how do ESDA plan to prepare our community for disasters or emergencies? Would that take up, publications alone would probably take up that fee? Not that you're doing under that 4-point-some million that we're doing for professional development. Again, you got another vehicle expense for ESDA, and it's $12,000. Are cars not being maintained? Because I see on average budget, we're averaging at least $12,000 to $15,000, $20,000 on maintaining vehicles under each budget. On number 10. Page 10. Again, if you go back to infrastructure again, it says infra improvement. You got $335,000 proposed and nothing previously used. Where's it coming from? I mean, we're spending money that we don't have. And I think if you're gonna present a budget to us, the public, can it be, please be way more realistic than what I'm saying? On page 11, under your total general fund expenditures, there's a difference of a difference under the total of $400,000. That's a $400,000 increase, not a decrease. It's very important to me how you expend our tax dollars. Page 12, I had no concerns. And of course, that was the fire revenues. Again, I come to page 13. We go back to vehicle expenses again. You got another $21,000. Why? Under the same fire fund expenditure, you have contractual services, $70,000. There is a difference in what I'm seeing under total contractual to total fire fund expenses of approximately $190,000. I'm just asking questions because I don't see it. I don't know where the money's coming from, but I see it proposed in this budget. And I didn't see where it's projections in the front part of your budget. Page 14. This is under the motor fuel revenues. Under professional services. I finally found a decrease. Last year you expended $69,000, and now you're only proposing to spend $60,000. I'm on page 15. And I'm at the bottom. And it says net drug seizure funds. Is that revenue over expenses? Can you ask me, I'm going to answer my question before I give you my question. The abbreviations that you have here, does that mean net drug seizure fund revenue over expenses? Sir, I'm at the bottom of the page of 15. Yes, no, I'm just trying to figure out. Is that what that means? I'm on page 15 at the bottom.
Go ahead, answer the question. Go ahead. Keep on listening.
Okay, then I'll just say my question because I didn't know how to phrase it. But then the question becomes, you budgeted $20,899 last year. You only spent $3,500. If it's revenue over expenses, then we had a positive of $3,545. But now you budgeted for us to have $50,000. So how do you have such an extreme? If that's what it means, because I'm not sure. But that's a big jump. We go from $3,500 to $50,000. $50,000 in positive. If that's what it means. Page 16. I see you did add your DECO grant here. This DECO grant that is under the water fund, is that the same one that you were talking about that Mr. Osborne, whatever the man's name was, that came from Springfield? Your lobbyist, is that this $75,000 here? On that same page 16, we have the IEPA loan. You have the $550,000 under the current, and then you have expended none of it. And I'm sure we have expended some of those dollars. But then you proposing only to spend $4,000. So what happened to the 100-some thousand that's not shown in the actuals? I'm on page 17. And it's water fund expenditures. Under professional services, last year you budgeted $70,000. You said you spent $115,000. And then this year we have zero under proposed. Why? On that same page, under the water fund, you have other contractual services. Last year, you proposed $200,000. We spent $401,000. And then this year, you proposed $4 million. It ain't adding up. And I'm only looking from what I printed off the internet. This is the only things I can ask questions from. This is what the budget shows. I'm on page 18. It says sewer fund revenues. We have transferred from the water fund $160,000. And I wanted to know why. And at the end of it, looking at your totals, last year we budgeted $543,000. You spent $583,000. But now you're proposing $750,000. Why $250,000 increase? To my understanding, you're a town that don't have any money. The sewer fund, my only question was that the sewer employee and the water employees, are they the same, and is part of percentage of each of the employees' money is coming from each of the different funds, or is it a separate, now have you separated the water employees from the sewer employees? On page 20. You have transfers to the general fund, which you proposed $200,000, you spent $200,000, and you budgeted $200,000. That's the best balance I've found in the whole budget. It was the same. It was congruent. It was consistent. I'm on page 21. I'm almost through your 27 pages. And page 21 is your CDBG fund revenues. Last year you budgeted $200,000. You said the actuals we used were $100,000. And then you went back to $200,000. So I want to know if this was, it says it's a grant. So did we not expend the money from the grant? The $100,000 that you said that we spent, and should that still be $100,000? Or do we keep the same total from the beginning of the grant? So is it a 2-year grant, or was it a 1-year grant? Is it a 5-year grant? How are we spending the money? So my question is, what is the length of the grant? On the same page, under professional services, you budgeted $250,000, and you say we spent $4,750. But then you go back and you propose another $240,000. If you only spent less than $5,000, why are we proposing $240,000? I'm on page 22. It says TIF 2, Sauk Point Fund revenues. Then it says property tax TIF districts. Last year you budget none, from what I'm seeing. But then you say we really actualized and spent $456,000. And then this year we proposed none. But if we spent $456,000, I don't remember. This stuff just ain't balancing out at all. And then also on that page, you have the other tips and the transfer to debt services. And it's all blank. Are we not paying debt services? Or you're not proposing it? Or is it proposed in another area? And I missed it. Maybe I missed it. I'm on page 23. Again, I just want to highlight professional services, but this time on the positive, because this last year you said you spent under the logistics center $101,000, and you proposed to spend none of it this time. You left it blank. So I don't know how we went from spending $101,000 to zero. I'm on page 24. Under professional services again. You proposed $70,000 last year's budget. You say you spent $44,988 for the fact. But then you go and you budget double that almost. This budget is $75,000. So what's the $30,000 increase for? I'm on page 25. Under police pension fund revenues, it says gain/losses on investments. We proposed a slash gain loss $250,000 last year. You spent $192,000, and then we budgeted $190,000. I don't know if it's gains, loss. It says gain/loss. So my question is, which one is it? Was it a gain or was it a loss? Where is it projected? Sound like we're overspending an awful lot of money. Professional services, under that particular budget, you proposed $55,000, you spent $46,000, and then you came in and you proposed $50,000. Much better balance than some of the others. I'm on page 26 of your 27. I really need some help in understanding this. I am down under, it says fire police fund revenues again, And it's down under property tax working cash. You proposed 85,000. And here it says you actually spent 37. And now you're proposing 85 again. And the interest we earned was $3. That's what it said. Right here. We earned $3. So if we only earned $3, and you propose 85, and you only use 37, why would you propose 85? I don't know, for me, it's just not adding. I'm on page 27. I'm sorry, I don't know if you want, maybe you don't. I will address the board man, but she also asked me, she said something, so I have the right to answer the question.
There's no discussion among the audience. It's to the board, to the mayor.
Ask her not to talk to me. He's the mayor. Okay, page 27, sir. I'm at the bottom of your page. And it says principal interest for 2002 bonds. You proposed $954,000. But you say we spent, and we paid, actually paid, the $1,769,000. So, and there's nothing proposed for now. So is it that we're now done with that debt service and you could have removed it from your budget since there's nothing there? Or do we still owe on the 2002 bonds? Because there's nothing proposed here. So I want to know if it's paid off. Again, I started my statement with you're asking us to pay and approve this budget. If you look at any of the numbers that I presented to you today, there is no way that you can honestly say to the citizens of this town that you took time and really looked at these numbers. And if the trustees will approve something that gives $4,739 in professional services to anyone from out of this town, then you need to really be talking to the people that you call yourself representing, because you should not spend anyone's tax dollars in such nonsense. Thank you.
Well, we're going to try to answer this former trustee's questions, because you know a lot of these questions, but the professional services is not just attorney fees. I think he should be aware of this. And I think residents need to be aware of it. Professional services are everything from litigation, attorney's fees, engineering fees, construction, our finance people that tell us, especially in our assessments like that, talk about the $4 million through this budget. It's talking about the $4 million we received through the IEPA. And again, a lot of things you looked at, you talked about things that were on the revenue side. You talked about some of the pages that were on the expenditure side. There's a difference if you look at your budgets. One is estimated, and when you think about a budget, especially for a municipality, we project, we estimate what we think is coming in, and Mohan's pretty good at figuring out the revenue coming in. You know, because we look at based off what we have what we received last year, based off of what the increases were. He works closely with the comptroller's office and the state and the county to find out what's coming in. So that kind of gives us an idea how much money we're projecting that's going to come in. Just because it says in one area that we budgeted $85,000 and we only spent $37,000, I can tell you right now, $85,000 is not sitting in that budget line item. we budgeted to spend up to $85,000, but we only spent 37. So, when you look at the budget, there's not $14 million, or just over $14 million sitting in a bank account somewhere with every one of these line items. The village works off of the revenue coming in, the tax revenue coming in. Based off what we project is going to come in, we put the line items together and say we can spend up to a certain amount inside these line items. And again, the $4 million is going to be spent because it's an IEPA loan. We don't have the money, but the work's being done. Everything gets sent through the village. The village presents it to the IEPA. The IEPA approves the checks and stuff. So work is getting done. We talked about some of the things that we talked about on June 30th, and some of the things we talked about in village board meetings. The revenues coming in for Parks and Recs. You know, we have, tonight we found about, you know, of course the board's already knew about it, $135,000 for the parks, Carroll Park. We've already talked about the $200,000 that we're applying for through the grant for the parks and playgrounds, which is $235,000 that we're anticipating. In fact, it looks very positive. We've already gotten word from Springfield that everything it looks good. They've come back, they've asked for one more piece of the equipment, so one more piece of information, which we talked about earlier tonight with our lobbyists. So $235,000 is coming into our parks and playgrounds, and the COPS grants for hire, we still continue to apply for those, and we have a great group of people over there when it comes to Tim Olivas and Becky Salisbury. We will continue to apply for COPS for hire. For some of the trustees sitting here, former trustees, they know exactly how it works, where we get grants, they pay for the first year, and then they pay for a certain percentage for some years after that, and then at the end, we pick up we pay for 100%. So the officers that we have that's from the former cops for hire, they're still working for us, and we're still paying for them. They are already included inside the budget as part of payroll. When it comes to senior committee, you're right, it's a zero. When it comes to infrastructure and roads, $585,000. That's what we're estimating we're going to put back into our streets when it comes to the CDGB grants, when it comes to $175,000 coming from the state, when it comes to other funds and stuff that we're anticipating coming into the village this next year through NFT funds. That's how much we plan on doing the roads. I think about $400,000 is what we're hoping for through CDGB. We talked about CDGB last year. We budgeted $200,000. However, we only got $100,000. So there's no extra $100,000 sitting out there. We applied for a $200,000 grant last year. We got $100,000. That's why $100,000 was spent. So when you look at stuff like that, and we could go through page after page. Some of these I marked up because I thought it was kind of interesting. You talked about ESDA, $12,000. If you look, it wasn't ESDA, it was street department, and that's for gas. And a lot of these things, and we talked about the vehicle expense for each department. A lot is for gas for our vehicles. So streets is estimated $12,000, and some of the other ones you talked about. The Parks and Recs, we already talked about $335,000. As we get the grant money, that money will go into our parks and stuff, and things that we've already applied for. And we're looking at doing improvements, expansions. Parks and Recs this last year, under the leadership of Trustee Poskin, has added more events and things than in years past. I think about, when I see him, I think about Mary Siri, how active she was. He's doing the same thing, getting these things out there for the kids. We're only going to get larger and larger. We've got that. You talk about the general fund expenditures. Based off the expenditures that we pay through the general fund is based off of what we project is coming in. Again, you talk about right around $400,000. I think it's pretty good, especially the fact that through our union negotiations, some things we've talked about. There's some people sitting here that haven't been attending the meetings. Under the previous administration, there was no union negotiations that was done. We have already approved three contracts from our unions that the previous administration wouldn't even deal with them. We've got one more to go, and once we get done with that, we'll be all caught up. When you think about the amount of $400,000 that we've increased, we had to go back and get union negotiations, or have negotiations with that they were trying to get rid of the unions. So we're trying to work with our unions. And again, trying to do it on the best interests of the village and trying to make it where we can afford it. So we work well with them. Again, vehicle expense on the fire fund, that's gas. And Mohan, catch me if I miss anything. You talk about,
Excuse me, sir, I don't know what page you're on because you're just talking, but I can't follow you.
well,
So I can send my other questions in writing.
so, and then the increase in the drug enforcement fund. Just last year, we just put a police officer on the South Suburban Gang Task Force. It's on page 15, that helps you out.
Thank you.
So we're anticipating $50,000, and that's on the low end, we're very conservative. The South Suburban Gang Task Force has done very well. In fact, the chief thinks that they just had a major bust, and he thinks that, I just talked to him the other day, he thinks we're probably gonna bring in over $50,000 just on this first bust that they had. So they are really doing well, and again, it was something that we applied for after I first became acting mayor. We had applied through Cook County, and our officer just got approved. He went through all the training, the testing, and he's now on there. So what does it do for Sauk Village? It also brings us additional resources into Sauk Village, because now that he is on that task force, we can use that task force to come into Sauk Village, and we can start addressing some of the areas that we're having problems. Also, just as he goes and helps in other communities, whenever there's a major drug bust or there's things that are caught, that gets split up between the communities that are involved in that. They also pay for the officers' overtime that's working, especially in the special details. For the task force, he gets a car, which was he was provided with a car. So there's a lot of things that help Sauk Village. You go to page number 16, you talk about the $75,000. That is the DEPA grant that we were talking about tonight with our lobbyists, page number 17. Again, $4 million IEPA loan. Again, we're spending that in the water department. That is where that money is going when it comes to professional services. We moved our professional services around. Again, looking at a way to pull money out of the water and sewer funds to pay for those through the general fund. We're paying for that through the general fund now. So again, paying for that. Again, moving those areas around. Page number 18. We talk about the $160,000. Again, that goes into general fund expenses, right? Mohan? The, I just want to make sure, transfer from water fund, $160,000, that's for general fund expenditures, expenses, right? Page number 19, you talk about how our employees paid. They're not separated. We have water, public works, and streets. We have them split up into these departments where we know that the revenue is coming in for these departments. We try to make sure that the funds are available for those individuals. But we have a staff of what, 9 now? Was it 7 or 9? I always get that mixed up. 7. We have 7 employees between the Public Works, Water Department, and Public Works, Water Department, and Streets. We have 7 employees. Those 7 employees are all pretty much cross-trained. They all work in everywhere. So you'll see those employees are the same employees that are out there fixing water main breaks. They're the same employees that are out there that are plowing the street. Same employees that are chipping wood. Same ones that are out there mowing grass. We have a couple that are dedicated for our water side. They have all the special licenses and things that you need to keep our water system up. But when they're not doing that, they're out there, they're working also. So 7 employees for our whole entire community. So kind of give you an idea. The again, transfer to general fund $200,000. Utility fund expenditures, that's for general fund. Yep. We already talked about where did the $100,000 go. We already received $100,000. We were hoping to get $200,000 through CDGB. So we received $100,000. You talk about the CN noise fund. That was revenue that the CN gave us to set up a noise fund. And you asked about last year we spent $4,700, and this year we're anticipating $240,000 because we have to be able to need that money so we can spend it. So if something happens, we still have $240,000 that falls within that CN railroad for that noise reduction fund in that area. So again, we've already got the delineators. there on Torrance Avenue, they're on both now Torrance and Cottage Grove, so that, so the horns won't be honking when the trains go by. CN, when they put that project in place, they gave Sauk Village $250,000? $300,000? $300,000, and that was how many years ago? About 4 years ago. So of the $300,000, there's still $240,000 left in that fund. You talk about property taxes. Let's see here for the TIFs. We didn't do anything because yeah. So everything's been abated already. So there's nothing that's being paid out this year because of the abatements. So you asked about what we spent last year and what we're spending this year. We're not spending anything because it's already been abated. Again, professional services, it's everything, and a lot of people think professional services is just attorneys. It's not just attorneys. We've got a whole list of professional services that deal with our work. And I already named a whole bunch of them. Engineers, attorneys, construction, finance, so it goes right down the list. Again, professional services on 24. You talk about the police and pension fund on page number 25. Again, this is something the police pension board should be doing themselves, but we've helped them out. Based off what they provided, we put the numbers in there for them. This is the police pension board, as you know, is separate from the village. So we got the numbers that they gave us, again, we throw it in the budget. So if you have a problem with how much they're spending for whatever, I think that's a question for the police and fire pension board. Let's see here. Page number 27 talks about the 2002 bonds. Where are you at, Lauren? 2002 bonds. We didn't put anything in there this year because why? We didn't put anything in there this year because of the 2002 bonds. What was the reason again? You look that up. It's on page 27. So last page. But again, a lot of your questions were repetitive for each department. So we're right there. 2002 bonds.
Mr. Mayor, in your explanation, you just explained that $4 million from the EPA in 4 different ways. Can you please clear that up for the public? Because I'm definitely interested in hearing it. This is a public meeting, so I'm not into your 2 minutes or 4 minutes, whichever one. But you just explained that $4 million in 4 different ways. So where is the $4 million?
The village, it's hard to picture this. The village received $4.8 million from the IEPA, but we don't have that $4.8 million. The IEPA has that $4.8 million. As work is getting done, we have to present the bills to the IEPA, and the IEPA issues the checks. So that's where the funds, when we put inside the budget, the work that's being done. If you looked at the consent order through the IEPA, through the Attorney General, there was a breakdown on how much money was being spent from that $4.8 million. So much went for engineering services, so much went for construction, so much went for the equipment that we're receiving. So as that stuff gets brought in, that's pretty much what it is. And when you look at, you're right, it's in a couple places. Because one is estimated revenue, because we're going to end up paying it out, and the other part is expenditures when you pay it out. So, again, that's why you'll see it under revenue, and you'll see it under expenditures. So, and it's not something
that on the website, but I'm really not understanding because you have said it again, and I don't know how you added $4 million 4 times, and then now you're telling me it's 2 times. So, I mean, please put the explanation on the website so we all understand that it's only $4 million. And it's only should show once under expenditures and should show once under revenue. But instead, you're still saying that it's the same $4 million 4 times. Something is just not, I mean, that's in your explanation. I'm just listening. I'm sorry.
All right. Any other questions?